Hello and welcome everyone again. This is Matthew Podwosaki back here, and today we're once again going to dive into TypeSpec and modeling existing things with TypeSpec with the help of GitHub Copilot. So previously we showed the GeoJSON example where we worked with Copilot to show how we can take an existing schema from an RFC, for example, and pull out the information such as what GeoJSON actually is. In this case, what we can do is take an existing service and convert that over. It's going to be a rather large API, so we're not going to cover all of it in this particular one, but we certainly will cover a bit of that. Just to reintroduce, so TypeSpec is a general purpose programming language here to describe your APIs and data structures and so on and so forth. It recently hit RC today, RC0 today, so that's a huge milestone. And you can go to typespec.io and you can find all of the information there. What's neat about this is that we can model not only HTTP as you normally would with a lot of your services and admit into OpenAPI or whatever programming language that you want to do, but also for JSON schema. So if you want to emit to JSON schema, you can do that, or into protobuf. So the idea is that you can take one code base and emit to several targets. And that's really huge. And as noticed, we did go to TypeSpec RC, so it's a huge, huge milestone for the project. And so, as you can see, it has a number of libraries that you can use, such as the compiler, OpenAPI 3, and JSON schema. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take an existing service here, such as weather.gov. There are plenty of other services out there that can be modeled, but honestly, this one seems like a good a target as any to get current weather information. And the spec is out there, is on weather.gov, and you can see it's a rather large API surface. So obviously, we're not going to cover all of that today. But we can start to flesh out what it would actually look like if we were to take existing services that you have and commit them directly to TypeSpec. So let's take a look at alerts here. So we're going to do alerts today and see how we can model that. Here we can have whether it's active, start time and end time, the status, the message type, and code areas, and a number of other parameters to basically get down the sheer number of alerts out there. So you can try it out if you want to. It's all on weather.gov. But what's also nice is that we have an API weather, an OpenAPI 3 listed here, and it has all sorts of information about all of the components and everything else that you want. Note that obviously it's not pretty here, but what we're going to be able to do is load in the weather API directly as part of the GitHub Copilot context, and then we can start to ask questions of the of our project. So let's switch over then to VS Code here, and there's part of us that's showing just a little bit of our previous chat. So let's just go ahead and clean this out and go to a new chat. Now here we have this OpenAPI 3 here, and as I stated, we have a lot of information in here about the types and everything else in there. So we can add that as context. So we can take the open editor and and add that to our context. Now we can then take, say, let's create a new file so we can start from scratch, and let's call this demo.tsp. All right, so what we can do is start to ask questions of this particular OpenAPI 3. And what we're going to want to do first is define the top level service. So let's go and do that. Using the latest TypeSpec, let's implement the top level service information for the weather service in the attached weather.openAPI JSON OpenAPI 3 specification. Alright, so what would it look like? So let's just talk about the top level things. So the top level things, obviously it's following some of our documentation here. And so what's neat is that it's trying to pull out some information, such as some of the things that I've had in our Copilot instructions. And the Copilot instructions, once again, is all about how you do product versioning and so on and so forth when you bring in a feature and what it does. So we will use the latest and greatest. Check out the TypeSpec website for more information. So let's just copy this and see what could possibly go wrong here. So let's do that. And obviously it doesn't like a lot of these things. Why? Well, in particular, it says that it doesn't know what the title of the service is or anything like that. So not exactly a good resounding start here. Now, if we decided here that we wanted to change something, is that yeah, so let's just go back to the documentation here and see where it really went wrong. So let's go and look at the docs. And for the standard libraries, or actually we can go to the playground, it doesn't really matter. The playground also helps when we just want to look at what an individual service would look like. So let's just look at a HTTP service here. So once again, as you can see, it didn't quite pick up a lot of the nuances here of how to do this properly. So we'll fix that by going back and into our code and seeing what we can do here. So let's go back and fix some of this. All right, so let's get rid of that. And in here, let's just keep for right now the title. And that is going to be using the hashbang syntax. Oops. That we saw previously, which was very much like the following of just like that. So here we can just say weather.gov service. And then from there we give it a namespace. So for example here it would be namespace weather.gov. Cool. All right. So as you can see, it's not really great yet at figuring out how we would model certain pieces. But fear not, we can work around some of those sorts of things. So obviously it needs some help with our particular things. So once again, adding our context with our our open editor and making sure that it still has our Copilot instructions and all of those sorts of things, so that we have everything in here. So let's try and implement the alerts. So let's implement the alerts route. Just, well, let's be clear, alerts route, and not the sub routes. Give me the implementation under the interface of alerts service, creating an operation to get the alerts with the appropriate parameters. Use aliases for the parameters so that they are reusable. All right, let's do that. So it's going to pull up the weather API here, and so it's going to pull up a lot of these things, and once again, not great, because it's really missing some information here, because all of these are potentially fairly interesting in terms of having an alerts context response, but it's missing a lot of information here, which is that all of these things are not necessarily just types, but they are also headers, for example. So it's once again missing that context. So once again, let's kind of fix that again, because it's not picking up the right things. So let's this is missing the fact that parameters such as zone, region, etc. are named in the query parameters. There needs to be decorators describing these fields. So, for example, whether it's, we can take a look at some of them. So, for example, if we were to go to the /alerts, I don't know if I could spell, I'd be a genius. So if we go to /alerts here, and you'll notice here that it's an in and it's a query and each of these things. So if we go then to say query start time, it shows it as a query parameter. It's a format of date time, so any number of these kinds of things. So it's missing the fact that there are query parameters and needs to be decorated as a query parameter. All right, so let's take a look at this now. All right, so all of these now are so we can say get alerts, and you can have the body here as a alerts collection, and so forth as the alerts collection response. Once again, not necessarily great, but we can certainly work through that. But like I said, it's really the back and forth here about how we're conversing with TypeSpec here. So let's go and just copy this in and see how badly it looks. And obviously it's a little bit bad here because you can't decorate an alias, which is exactly what I was trying to tell it, that you can't, it has to be an alias for a particular thing. So I cannot have any decorators. However, the alias can be a field such as a string, such as cursor string, and the query query parameter decorator on top of that. So let's see if it's actually fixed that. It has to a certain degree. Now, the problem ultimately is that it just has this model here, and that's not quite how I really want to do that. But we can do both. Let's model each parameter as an alias to an object, where it looks it looks like a model, but it's a wrapper for a field. All right, and so here, this is exactly what I'd be looking for. Here we can say all of these particular things that are described here, and then let's just copy these parts down. And let's just copy one at a time because it's quite all-encompassing. But here we go. So if we want to say active param, really what we're wanting to do is not is, but this. So it is an active parameter, and then what we can do is then we could use that as a spread over the existing piece. So let's feed that back and say instead the aliases should look like the following. And so here it's going to pull them out correctly this time, and hopefully and it will sure enough have all of these query parameters and all of that now put down here. So let's copy what it has so far, and it's currently working on all of these. So let's pull this into our workspace here. All right, so let's go there. All right, great. Now we've got some of this stuff. Now what we really want to do is we want to use some certain things such as UTC date times, for example, that the start time and end time really should be UTC date time. So let's tell it to do that. The query start and end times should be and not string. So once again, it's kind of a back and forth, but obviously some of these um, are back and forth conversations that you would have for Copilot. But as you can see now, it is fixing this for UTC date time. So we can say that and that are now both UTC date times. Awesome. So now that we've got a lot of these things here, and now let's tell it to implement, again, now that we've got these pieces here, let's implement the /alerts top level. Once again, it needs the open editors, top level API under the alerts service using under the alerts service interface using the aliases from above, using the spread operator. All right. So what it's going to do is it's going to give us back this alerts, and it's going to give it back as alerts, obviously, of string, but that's not right, obviously, of what it actually is in terms of a real response. Going back here, we can look at our alerts and see that our alert collection is, in fact, not a string, but is a complex object. And not only that, but we also have to know that it has an error as well. So let's do some more deep dives here. All right, so let's what about the error case? Can we model the error, general error should the operation not be successful? All right. So it's going to have an error response here, which has a number of pieces. But what it doesn't necessarily have, and what we need to kind of tease out of here, is the fact that it has a headers, content, etc. And here, in this particular case, it doesn't have those particular things. It's missing a number of these things. So let's go back and actually just tell it to do. Let's just do the very bare minimal of implementing the alerts collection, and for both and just GeoJSON. So let's forget about the error case for right now, and let's model the proper return for the alerts collection, which is not a string, but is JSON. Can we model that? With the object, or model, rather. All right, so it's going to go back and take a look. Okay, so it's now going to have an alerts collection. It's going to have some data associated with it. So this is good. This is great. This is exactly what we're looking for in terms of what the alerts collection response should look like. So here we are, and so now we've got the alert collections response, and we're going to have the alerts. So here, in particular, we need to also obviously pull back the other pieces, but the content when it is GeoJSON or Atom XML are going to be slightly different. But in the grand scheme of things, we're not going to worry about that right now. But what we're also missing, the response headers of the correlation ID, request ID, and server ID. Can we implement those using aliases? So we're going to have all of these headers coming back. So now we've got these aliases here for our request and correlation ID and server ID. So let's get all three of those. And now we can go back here and we can put those in here. That we have our server ID, request ID, and so forth. And then here that it will, we could say that it does in fact use this kind of thing or an error response. It doesn't. It's all really of personal taste. You can actually put it on the alert collection response instead. So for example, here we could just put in the correlation ID header and server ID header, all of those. So that, to me, is a little bit more idiomatic for that. But for right now, I think we're coming up on the 30-minute mark. So I do want to do one last thing, which is, so here, this will be the body of the alert. So in particular, this piece will be our body, and we can really figure out about the whether it's JSON and so on, or XML in the next version. But one thing I do want to pull out is let's go then to the error type, and let's add in once again our open editors. And let's go back here and said we need to implement the type with headers and everything as the error case for all operations. Can you model that? All right, so hopefully it'll pick up in the weather API once again, and it will pick out the pieces for the generalized error that we're going to get. So an error response itself is going to have exactly those kinds of headers that we had before, but now we can just put in, for now, these particular pieces from the error model response, and put that here. And now we can say whether the operation down below here for this will return that or the error response. And there's obviously some stuff that we need to go through and say, no, that's not quite the case. The title is not a part of the body. And we need to obviously distinguish that in fact, in the case of the alerts response, only really happens here when we get a successful code, which is a 200. So there are a number of things that we can do from here, but like I said, is that I think after 30 minutes, I think it's a good stopping point. But I hope you found that this was uh, useful, that you can start to implement things such as existing brownfield APIs using TypeSpec and using VS Code and using a lot of the context as well as your own personal settings for doing these pieces of taking brownfields and converting it over into TypeSpec. So thank you all very much for your time today, and I will catch you next time.